Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. Her name is Sasha Greenidge. She's a mindset coach who utilizes Gene Keys to help women really just find their direction and purpose. So thank you so much for being here today, Sasha.
I'm so excited to be here.
Really, I know that it's similar to, the Gene Keys are similar to human design. So I really can't wait to dive in and hear more about this aspect of it. But let's start with, who are you, and just tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you offer.
So I am a Ignite certified mindset coach. Like you were saying, Sarah, I use the Gene Keys as a tool to kind of help people find their direction, their purpose, and some pitfalls that they might have. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I've been in the special education field for 20 years. And now I'm pursuing, kind of coming full circle back to helping people in a more mindset kind of way.
You know, you're actually not the first person who's started in psychology and ended up in human design. A lot of the people that I've talked to and know personally who loved human design started with an interest in psychology. So I find that interesting, but I guess, psychology is all about the mind, right? It's all about like behaviors, why we do what we do. And human design, and it sounds like Gene Keys is similar, really just allows us to figure out more about why we do what we do, which is, I guess, what psychology is about.
Yeah, it's a whole different take on it. And you almost have to have this more open mind than you do in psychology. And everything has its place. So I still, kind of read up on certain things and definitely respect that field. This is something that is opening something that we kind of let go away. So I feel like the Gene Keys is a map of going past the mind, because sometimes the mind can hold us back, and kind of bring us into something deeper that is more innate in us. But very quickly in childhood, we're told to kind of shut that down right away, because that's weird, that's not acceptable by society, and we lose that. And then wonder why we are in our Gene Keys, we call them shadows or lower frequency. We wonder why the rest of our life, for many of us who can't innately just kind of get with the program, so to speak. That was me. And we wonder why we're not getting ahead. And it's because some of us really need to tap into what is our highest potential, but we're so busy looking at what everybody else is doing. But I'm not supposed to be doing what you're doing. Your purpose is, if I looked at your Gene Keys, probably wildly different. So, and what's funny is I have somebody who has the same set in the same order, and we're different people. We're still like same exact 9, 16, 37, 40, 37, and same thing, different profiles. Somebody else has the same thing, same profile, but we have different experiences. So we're going to go through this differently, but we lose that. Some of us are just trying to do what everybody else wants us to do, or society wants us to do. And that's not your purpose. You're trying to live something. And ironically, we find that a lot of those people that we're trying to like idealize or copy or try to be, they don't even know who they are. And round we go.
So what you're talking about is kind of like blending what's like psychologically and like spiritually, right? It's kind of that soul aspect, which I think that's the part that gets missed, because, when you're talking about when we're children, we're closer to our core essence. We're not having to be or think about being anyone else. We just are, right? And then we get conditioned, like you were saying. And it is ironic that society says conform, society says blend in, because you don't want to be different, because being different isn't always a good thing, right? But you're right, those that tend to be in the spotlight on be like me, they do tend to not really know what they're doing. They're just trying to conform into whatever they think they should be.
Right.
And so that's why I love these modalities like human design, or learning about Gene Keys, or astrology, or there's just different ways of plugging into our true selves and kind of getting back to what that is, instead of trying to add on to what we should be. So yeah, that is fascinating. And I love that that's part of like what pushes you is you're like, yeah, I started in psychology, but now I'm doing more. Now I'm taking it a step farther and deeper. So what led you to finding the gene keys? What is your backstory that led you to doing the work that you're doing today?
So it's always funny because so as I said, I was in special education for like 20 years. And so I wanted to kind of get out of that space and kind of like do something to like work for myself. So I actually started like in between this mindset coaching thing and my day job, like being a teaching assistant. I tried a network marketing company, which was amazing, but I wasn't having the success that I wanted. So I hired a coach, and ironically, I hired a coach so that way she can help me with my network marketing company. The way she was coaching me and helping other women and things like that. And I'm working toward like a business goal, but meanwhile, my entire personal life is completely changing based on like this different way of thinking. At the time, she was teaching Bob Proctor's like thinking into results, like things I've never heard before, on top of things that she was learning in the life school that she had done previously, and then later to bring on the gene keys in human design. But I was like, I want to do this. And this is when she opened up her own coach school. And I was like the first. I was like in the first graduating class of that and was like, I need to get on this because psychology was something I always wanted to go back to and dabbled in maybe trying to go back for teaching. And I was like almost done with my master's. And I was just like, no, like, this is what I want to do. So that's the roundabout. Like, I went to go get help for something else, ended up like finding like doing coaching and just kind of letting that the network marketing thing kind of fall at the wayside. I kind of get now when people are talking about, oh, this is aligned with me. It doesn't have to be all woo, but for the first time, it's listening to my intuition. I know some people that are very logical, like my daughter and like some other people I know, like, oh, all this woo. And I'm like, I get the woo. I get the woo. It's listening to this intuition. This wasn't working for me. You know, and it does work for some. It just didn't work for me. And this is how I just came about doing that. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I enjoy helping people.
One of my favorite things about backstories is really kind of seeing the evolution and seeing like what was the drive, right? Like how did you get there? And most of the time, like you, it kind of falls into your lap. It's not on your radar. It's just something that finds you versus you finding it. And I find that so fascinating because I know you're talking about woo woo, right? And I am, you're preaching to the choir because I am a tarot reader. Like that's my profession when I'm not podcasting or doing my day job. But I'm not just a tarot reader. I'm like a spiritual channel slash, I focus more on the now. I'm not a predictive reader, but I didn't want to do this. Like, I didn't look for this work either. Like, I had my cards and they were very helpful for introspective things on the side, just for myself. And then when I started having my awakening, I kept hearing tarot. Tarot is where you need to start. And I was like, can't be a tarot reader, because that's really woo. You want to talk about woo? At least yours has some kind of a scientific, you know, rooting. But I found the more I did it, the more I stepped into that role, the more me I felt. And it was like I found the job that just aligned, like you were saying. So it's almost like there's breadcrumbs that leads you to your path. And it's up to you whether or not you're going to take them and do anything with them, but they're there. And that's what it sounds like. The universe was like, yeah, I think you want marketing help, but we're going to give you a little something else.
It was great because I think for a long time, I wanted to get back. Like I was, when I tell you, like, I was this weird kid. I just like, I loved, that was me. That was always me. And I think for years and years and years, I fought like hell to like, or my soul has been to try and get back to this point of like what you're supposed to do. It's to so many is not going to make logical sense. It's not like it's just not. And yeah, I have a lot of spiritual friends too that like, it's funny how when I stepped into that space, all of these people that like entered my life, all the spiritual people, tarot readers, like, people, and it was amazing. And so you almost get this like this backing or this community and different ways of helping me now, like that are not like this traditional way. So it's actually amazing. It's like coming back to me and coming back to like just magic in a different way because I'm not meant to be this like everybody else kind of thing. I'm accepting that, you know?
Yeah, I think the thing that most people are discovering, because it's not just you or me, it's there is an awakening happening. Like
Yeah.
this was not a conversation 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or if it was more underground. You know, this is definitely more mainstream. You see this on TikTok or Instagram, like more mainstream. And so I think what most people are discovering is that it was never about being who or not. It was never about trying to conform into someone else's box. It
Yeah.
was always about rediscovering ourselves and reconnecting with ourselves at our core that has always been there, but society said, oh no, get rid of that. That doesn't belong.
Right.
Like it's so funny too, because like the old paradigm says go to school, get a good job, get married, have kids, repeat, do that with your kids, get them to do
Yeah.
all those things.
Check,
And
check, check. Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're taught. And then nowadays, it feels like people are more starting to realize, like, well, wait, that doesn't make me happy. Like, what's the point of doing this 9 to 5, or fitting in this role of like, oh, I'm only a mother, or oh, I'm only a wife, or oh, I'm only a marketing person, or you know what I mean? Like realizing, well, we're so much more than that, and why can't we be happy and follow all these other things too? Like, why can't we have the both and why do we
Right.
have to do what society says we should do? And so I just find it fascinating the awakening happening, and it's so similar to what you're describing. You're like, that wasn't me, and now I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I know I'm making a difference, and I'm seeing, and it sounds like you're also seeing the transformation that the gene keys are bringing.
It's amazing to see. It's always like we're so intimate with our shadow. So in the gene keys, there's like in every single one. So there's a shadow, a gift, and then what they call the city, which is your highest frequency. We're always intimate. Like it's the gene keys are great because it puts a name to your shadow, which people are like, "Oh, I'm stuck on whatever," but there's a very specific thing that causes you to feel these things. Like in my life's work and my evolution, my shadows are inertia and indifference. So when I fall into those spaces, like that's where I go and I go down fast. So I'm aware of that. And like, I've become aware of it and I try not to stay there long. But the biggest thing that I find with people is when they never saw their true potential. They think they have, or maybe inadvertently at times they've seen that, or even touched the city in times of like where they really needed that. But when they look at their like just the activation sequence for the first time and they're like, that's me, especially with radiance and purpose, because that's how everybody else sees us, but they don't see, we can't see that in ourselves. So that's the unconscious part. But the conscious part, like people just even looking at their gift and city, and a lot of people are no way. They're like, no way, I'm capable of that. And it's like, yeah, just it's almost like turning your head to kind of looking somewhere else than your shadow, because we're so intimate with that. You know that you put a name to it. Now then we start that process of like really working through just accepting it and allowing it to a fault because that's where we grow, as much as we still need that. It's like, oh, we don't want it to go away, but it helps us grow. But then when just if I it's so hard to explain just that picture of people's faces of like their eyes light up. It's just a beauty to see. It's really just like a beauty to see them like almost seeing something different. It's like them looking in the mirror and seeing themselves, but at this highest frequency for the first time in their life, and the potential that they have within them, and them able to for them to kind of get that trust in themselves. And the beauty of all of this is like I'm just here to guide. The work and contemplations and everything else has to come from them. And immediately I have somebody who's 20 years old and is studying herself, has the Gene Key book like I recommended, and is studying this herself. 20. Like, honestly, some of us think of when you were 20, like, but she has a leg up. She had the know-how to be like, I don't like where I'm at 20, and I want to do this. She now has an idea of what her potential is and is like, "Oh, I get it now. I get why these people are this way," or "I get towards me." It's not her space. What her gene key, one of them is like a rebel without a cause. That's her and her gift. Of course, you're not going to be down here with people in their shadows. They don't want to move or do anything different with their life. You're supposed to be someplace else with a whole different crew of people. But
Yeah.
when you see that, you start to move now differently. So it's fascinating.
So first of all, it sounds very magical, like the experience of like watching people really step into their own power and see like what they're capable of. But to your point too, with the 20-year-old, I'm seeing that more and more too with the work that I do. So like when I give readings, and again, I don't do like predictive readings. It's always about like I like to call it a roadmap where I'm telling them where they've been, where they're at, and this is how to get where you want to go. And that's like the higher self perspective and the channeling. I did a graduation party last year. So these were all like 18-year-olds. Okay. These were kids. And they were so open. And you'd think at that age, they wouldn't really resonate with what I'm sharing, especially with it being more deeper and abstract and bigger picture. But they were just soaking it in. And I'm seeing that more and more the younger kids or young adults. I think it's because they're part of this paradigm shift. For like me and you, we were still kind of trying to be forced into this old paradigm. We're trying to be
Yeah.
forced into the structure, but they're in this place where there really is no structure because the structure is kind of breaking down around them. And so I see more awakenings from the younger generation. I see more this open-mindedness to spirit, to soul searching, to figuring out who they are earlier. So that, and I love that. And so I love that you're even working with people that young, because I think if the younger generation found themselves quicker, got plugged into what was in alignment for them and did what they loved sooner, what kind of world is waiting after that?
I say that all the time. I'm like, what happens when most of the people, 90 to 95% of the time, are in their gift, in their gene key gift? We're human, and there are other humans with their own set of gene key profiles. But what if we all like were in our gift, and then instead of like saying, "Oh, I want to do what Sarah's doing," or "I want to be like her," it's like, this is my profile, this is my gift. And then you're coming together as a collective, though, as yourself, and bringing your best self to this. Fascinating. You said the same thing. It's just, I wonder that, because that's what it is. It's just, we get like, this is why it's so frustrating, because I'm guilty of it. This is what I have done my entire life, and wonder why I have the results that I had attracted the people that I did. Because that's another thing with a lot of people that are like, I don't understand. Am I attracting these people? Yeah, because this is where you are. You're sending out a beacon, like, so when you're on that unconscious side, and it's your radiance and your purpose, and that is something that is supposed to be your aura and your light. So that's your beacon out to people. Is that going to be light, or is that going to be in your shadow, where you're just like, and some shadows are some pretty, nasty things. So where you don't want to sit in, and you don't want to project that out to everybody.
It's funny. So, like in the spiritual community, they would call that lessons. When you're attracting the same kind of dynamic over and over and over, it's because you haven't learned yet. And so, when you plug that into something like the gene keys, and where you have like your shadow or your light, it kind of makes it more clear. Like, see, when you're not doing the work and you're not healing, you're unable to connect with the light. But if you understand like what your shadow is and you heal it, that's when you connect with the light. So that is so interesting. When did you just think about the other perspectives of like spirituality and belief systems, and the idea of, well, unless you learn, you're going to be repeating that same cycle. And I think that that's what most people who are unaware are in.
Yeah.
If you're not aware of who you are and what you're doing and what's going on in your life, you're going to be sleepwalking and then complaining the whole time. And I
That's
feel like mine and your job is to like help wake people up.
absolutely. Because it's just even to see the potential. It's not like this is who you are. It is in you. Like, that's what I tell people. It's definitely in you. It's just you having to go and pull that out, because that's just potential. It's like, for my logical friends, it's potential energy. That's what like Albert Einstein talks about, all this potential energy and frequencies and stuff like that. It's all this potential energy. Are you tapping into it? And that's what it is. It's giving people, because the gene keys are a map. They're just simply a map. And it's like, well, I don't know what to do or how to help myself. Like, there's your gift and there's your city. And when you study that, and when I always say study and contemplate, Richard does have audio recordings that like I would give to my clients, but if you wanted to go off on your own, he charges for that. But he does have a book and with all 64 gene keys, and you just kind of just look at your gene key. He has the shadow, the gift, and the city, and it's beautifully written. And people are able, I've read it, and that's the thing, repetition too. Like I never just looked at things once. It's now I can't even count how many times I've gone back to the book, listened to it. I like know his stories that he's saying in the audio at this point by memorization. But each time I find something different, because in that moment I'm going through something or I'm frustrated with something or somebody, and I'm kind of listening to it. And sometimes it's like, boom, there it is. There's that shadow, and that's exactly where you're in. But when you do that, you don't stay in those things long, and you learn from it. So then you're right back in, and but moving higher and higher up.
So for listeners who don't really understand what gene keys are, I know we've talked about it now at length, and so there may be some listeners trying to be like, well, what is it? I don't know what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So can you explain what gene keys are, and also like what the benefits are? Like, I know you kind of touched on it, but maybe a little bit more like for those that are really like, what is this? I want to understand.
So Gene Keys is a tool. It's basically a tool. He uses different like old world modalities like the I Ching. There is some astrological stuff. There's science in there. And Ra Uru, who is the creator, well, I'm sorry, he was the creator of human design. Richard Rudd created these, but that's where like all of that like originates. So I just like to talk about what they call the activation sequence. So if and when you get your gene key there, you're going to look at the green spheres, and it's going to kind of go in a zigzag, but you're following it like a zigzag. And basically the four that I like to talk about, because there's a Venus sequence and a Pearl sequence, but the activation sequence, like I said before, makes up 70% of who you are. So that's where I focus, and that's pretty much where I stay with people, because that's your life right there. So there's the first sphere, which is your life's work. That is like your it's the most important thing that you should be studying and that you're going through. That's what you're here to do. And then there's your evolution. So between the life's work and the evolution sphere, that is your primary challenge. That's the biggest issue. So if you're looking at the shadows of both of your life's work and your evolution, that is your primary challenge. Anytime you feel fear, you're upset, you're angry, or like something's not going right, you immediately at least check there first. And that's 9 times out of 10 where your problems are. And again, within each sphere, there is every single one, a shadow, a gift, and a city. So you're always looking, this is how deep this can go. Once you kind of get a handle on your life's work and your evolution, it's gonna move across to your radiance. And so now we're getting into the unconscious part to you, what we don't see, because that is what everybody else sees, your radiance and purpose. But as you move from your evolution to your radiance, that is your breakthrough. You've managed to have a breakthrough. And now you're at your radiance. And then it goes down to your purpose. But all four of these make up pretty much your purpose, your life's purpose. And so it's really, really important to study each. And then what people will notice is after in the spheres, there's like a point and then a number from 1 through 6. And that's your profile. And that's kind of like the clothes or the jacket that you kind of wear with that sphere and everything else. So that first part in your conscious part, mine is a line 1. So that line 1 has a flavor. That line 1 likes to go deep and study clearly and do all of those things. But there's also a shadow aspect to that too. Like, I can go too deep. I have all this information, but I might not be confident in sharing it. Do I know enough? Can I be a speaker on this? That runs through my head every presentation, but I overcome that. And then there's a line 3, which is on the radiance and purpose side. And that is someone who is I kind of fall down a lot and get up, and I'm learning through my experience. So what my coach calls the 1-3 is the experienced authority, because I've learned all of these things, but I had to really go through it. So everything that I'm talking about with people, I've experienced. I've experienced every terrible thing that's happened, but the breakthrough that I had to go through to do that. And that's what I teach on, because I've gone through it and then learned about it. So we go much more in depth, very slowly. Like with one of my clients right now, we're still in the life's work sphere. I say to go, we start at the first 2, but like I mean, we're on week 3 or 4, and we're still on the life's work. It's deep because a lot of things come up for people. You'll quickly understand it once I break things down for people, but like there's a lot that comes up in that one sphere. We're 3, 4 weeks in, and we still have 3 other gene keys, but we don't rush it. You cannot rush it, because there's a lot of people that this has never come up for anybody before, and it's really gonna go in and dredge things up, and we have to face a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean that's really where that shadow aspect comes in, where it's like I think most people, I can imagine, at least with the work that I do, it's not as structured as yours. It's more of an intuitive thing, but I'll have a similar experience where, and I've been told I really good at shining a light on what people need to hear or see that they weren't aware of. Or no, it's not that they weren't aware of it. I'm going to rephrase that they were not doing anything with, but they knew was there.
Okay.
Because 9 times out of 10, or really more like 10 out of 10, I'm not telling people anything they don't already know. I'm tapping into something they already know, but they aren't like acknowledging or doing anything with. So there's a lot of confirmation and validation with it. So what you're doing is probably very similar, because you're validating and confirming these things that they've struggled with their whole life, but didn't have a name for it. They didn't
Yeah.
have like what it meant or why they were this way, and probably even thought there was something wrong with them for being the way that they were. Whereas this is showing them like, no, this is how you always have been. This has always been part of you. So it's really cool when you're able to see like the gears turning, and so I can understand it's in again being with the psychological background. So you
Yeah.
probably like really holding people's hands through these processes
Yeah.
of trying to understand why they are the way they are.
And it's hard because some people, especially if you're very heavy on like the individual side, like, and I'm finding that one client, it's a lot of individualism. And when you stick somebody in these group settings where like they're not meant to be there, like it's literally like I tell people, it's not in your design. And you're wondering why, like, boom, you just keep hitting this wall with either certain people or just areas in your life, or things like that. It's kind of like you're not supposed to be there. There's like certain places where it's not even outgrowing, it's just like it's not in your design to be there. Like even with my son, like I let way off. Like I love to use him as an example because he's in human design considered a projector, which means his energy is open. And I used to be like, why are you getting home? You're not doing your homework. What's going on? Like, he doesn't have the energy. That's not in his design. He's in what they say in BG5, like the business school of human design, is that he would be an advisor. He's here to advise others. He also has to wait for permission from people. He can't just like, because that could be offensive. But do you see something so small, like me pushing him, and him just really getting angry? He doesn't have that energy. So when he gets home, it's immediately, oh, I want to go hang out with my friends. Like to some people, oh, that wouldn't work with my son or whatever. Well, if they're a generator like me, like obviously, like get them to do that work. They could do that work. He needs the breather after being in school for 6 hours. He can't, he literally, it's in his design. We'll get nowhere. I give him that time, he comes back and he does what he needs to do. And looking at some of his gene keys as well, he's also, besides that one point, he's defined everywhere. So now I have a kid who's like, he's open there, but he's defined everywhere else. So it's hard, but then looking at his gene keys, you start to have empathy for people as well, where you maybe were once very frustrated. You can see where, kind of using these two tools, but, for Gabriel, it was more important to learn his human design first because I knew something was like I needed to go deeper, and that's kind of where to go. But with my daughter, same. I'm able to look at her gene keys and see where certain things are, and it's like, oh, she's not meant to like kind of have somebody hovering over her, and she's got to be her own boss. That's a huge thing than me micromanaging people. So you learn to let up or like support where you need. You're very, and this is in the hands of everybody else. It doesn't just go with me telling anybody what to do. Here's this, and just guiding people and like being able to laser precision a lot of things like that's coming up for people. It's like, oh, this is coming up for me this week, and I can literally go into their design and say, bring this up. They've, been studying themselves, and then we can talk about it. It's not me trying to roundabout figure out anything. It's like I can kind of gauge, and they can kind of gauge which gene key is coming up for them, and we go in, and then we know where we need to go because here's your gift in your city. This is where it's not a guessing game. It's
Yeah.
not a guessing game. It's there. This is your potential. We fall in the shadow. Let's work through that. But here's where you need to go because we're always trying to figure out who do we need to be. It's there.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Yeah, and I love that, you're already using it on your children and kind of using that as a way to raise them. In fact, I've heard that's the whole reason human design was created, was for the future generations to
Yep.
raise kids based on their strategy. And so it's so funny because I've done that a little bit with my own daughter. I'm a projector, so I can relate to what you're
Oh,
sharing.
no. Yes.
Yeah. But my daughter is a manifesting generator. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like I try and remember, okay, so she's gonna have lots of interests. She's gonna bounce around with them, and I need to just let her. I need to let
Yeah.
her follow whatever's lighting her up. And that's, and for me, I have to be more mindful of the fact that like I see like I'm more like your son. I like to take things very slow and very casual and very like I've really learned, especially through tarot, because I found human design first, and then I was called into like doing something with tarot and being a guide and stuff. And now it all makes sense. I'm like, oh my gosh, as a projector, that's what I do. The tarot is just my tool. But, my daughter is just very go, 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 go. And I'm not. So it's an interesting balance of like giving her the space to do what she needs to do, but also finding ways to take care of me and recuperate on my end. And which is hard because of sometimes she likes to come and sleep with me. And I apparently projectors we should not be sleeping anywhere near generators because they're constant energy. It's like we don't actually get to
Yeah.
rest and replenish. So I'm like, ugh, it's kind of hard as a single parent, but it's learning how to be aware of her strategy versus my strategy and give us each the space we need. And that it's a challenge, but at least now I understand why she's the way she is, and I know what I can do to help her
Right.
grow.
Yeah, it's just being able to kind of hold that space for people. And I let way up because it's not there. It's just not there. Now it's like when he says things, oh, this is what I want to be, or this is what I want to do. Like I go to town on people like, like my parents and stuff. Oh, you need to whatever. No, no, no. Like he has got to find what he wants to do because that's not in his design at all. And I
Yeah.
just to giving him that wide berth now and not to like just be too much in his space because he also can't have I don't know if you find like you just can't be around too many people. Like he just has like a very small group at a time. Like he'll find that he'll hang out with like even in a group, he'll stick with one or two people in that group because he can't handle them all at once. Or he'll just go and say, "Oh, I'll hang out with you tomorrow." And like it's funny things that you notice. And but that's he's doing what's comfortable for him. So it's really good. And it's teaching, being able to kind of teach them like, this is where you're what's more probably going to be best for you innately, though he knows that. But like anything deeper, especially as he gets older, it's really important to know these things like, about yourself so you can go ahead and choose things that, and go in the direction that you want to go in.
100%. So do you feel like you've found your purpose in the work that you're doing right now? Like,
I think before when I first graduated my coach school and my whole life, I knew I wanted to help people, but it was that's so general. I definitely thought it was going to be more like the psychology thing. It's funny how things come full circle, but I'm doing it my way. But like in business, it was hard to find, how they say to find that niche and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? It was really hard. And this came along and it's, usually these things, just putting it out there for everyone, it takes time. But like for me, when I've been doing this work beforehand, and then like what you just, I got like a beeline. It was finally like the design came up and as I started, cause it was a slow learning, I was like, oh my God, this is what this is supposed to be. And we kind of went through all of it, went through the entire like activation sequence and your pearl sequence, which is how you're supposed to bring about your purpose to the world. And then going into human design, which then like I started to find out like, oh, even more stuff. And I was like, this is it. It confirmed a lot of things, but it also showed me exactly where I'm supposed to be helping people. Immediately from this, I guess in a roundabout way, I might have found it, but I still wouldn't have been able to precisely pursue this. But now, like, this is it. I don't get distracted much. And now I get the whole this aligns or it doesn't. He or she aligns or they don't. Like, this is now like, especially at my age, this is it. I have a job to do. Now I know what that is. So absolutely know my purpose now.
yeah, I love that. And it is interesting how you said that you might have found it in a roundabout way, but this is just more direct and gives you a little bit more information on like what it is specifically. And I do love how earlier you mentioned how there's someone else who has all the same things as you as like on the paper, but obviously you're going to find your purpose in different things despite
Mhm.
being the same. And so what I think it allows you to do is from what I am, and this is just kind of, I'm speaking more from what I know about my human design, which kind of touches on purpose. What is it called? The cross thing?
Foundation cross.
Yes.
Yes, which is your core four pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. And so mine is to provoke. And I'm gonna tell you, I had a hard time when I first read that because I hate confrontation.
Mhm.
And that immediately made me think of being confrontational. But then I realized, no, I provoke something within someone to help them make a shift. So it's like I'm able to get kind of past people's, I guess, initial barriers to a point. And I think
Yep.
it's because I'm able to kind of like get real clear, like this is what you need. And it's not just, I'm not just saying whatever, it's resonating with them. It's like, oh my God, you're right. How did you see that or know that? But that's like my gift. But like someone else could take that carnation cross and do something else entirely with it, but also provokes. I guess
Right.
it could be like a painter who like is able to paint these images that provoke something in someone else. You know what I mean? It can come in
Right.
so many different ways, but based on your own compass, like this is what I'm supposed to do. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like
Yeah.
that's just like for you, it's like the stepping to the gene keys was like, yes, this is it.
Absolutely. It's laid out for people so much so that, I mean, it's not dummy proof because you need help. Like I'm going through, like, as I'm learning human design, I'm obviously still working with my coach and learning more about that gene keys. I'm constantly studying. And the more I work with others is also how much better because if I just study my 1-3 and like my core 4, like, so I'm studying everybody, clients and everybody around me to get to know them better and to kind of like help them. But it's dummy proof that once you actually get all of that, like, you can't unlearn and can't unsee your potential. There used to be so much distraction and so much like, what am I supposed to do and whatever. But even if I'm in some kind of confusion, I can go back and read just like my life's work or something else. And that's going to provoke something to come out and be like, "Oh, yeah, like, there was something where I was trying to do too much," and I went back and I listened to, 'cause my life's work is the ninth gene key, and the way I can hear it right now in my head, Richard's voice, just going slow steps, just small, slow steps. Instead of, like, and he says you can take a grand leap to have a grander fall. And that goes through my head anytime I'm trying to be like rush, 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 or skipping stones, like, skipping 5 stones when I'm supposed to be going, to the next stone. So that way the next one could be revealed. So you can always use these to go back. That's why, like, I don't even have my book on me, but tabs upon tabs, and just like the 50 different times I've written something, and that's what you can do. Like, just either have a notebook, or like I just said, F it, I'm going to write in the book, and just so many downloads, but like I can always refer back to that, like, and it gets you're studying yourself. That's the k that's the whole key. We're so busy and studying history and everybody else, which is important, but we don't study ourselves. We study everybody else and what they're doing. So, and when you go through that, you realize the infinite potential. Like I said, I'm still like on the life's work with one client for 3 weeks, and they're not like, "Oh, let's move on," and whatever. They're still there because they have stuff to do there, and I
Mm.
don't rush it. That's why, I take the year with people, because there's no way, like, everyone's different and we go through things in between, but it's fascinating. It's just so fascinating, and I never get bored of seeing their eyes light up when they see themselves for the first time.
That's your why right there.
Yeah.
And it's true, we all have our own pace. So some of us are able to pick it up like that. And some of us are like, whoa, I need to sit with this and like really take it in slowly, which kind of goes back to our design and our charts, right? It's
Mhm.
how we're supposed to absorb information and everything. So from here, I'd love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. And so I love to just talk about synchronicities because it's like the spiritual aspect of everything we're trying to do. And it's the breadcrumbs from the universe saying, yeah, you're not alone. I'm here. You're either at alignment or not, but usually the more alignment you are in is when you see the synchronicities, or maybe it's just to get you back into alignment through synchronicities. It's so many different ways. But do you have any fun or cool synchronicity story you'd love to share, either that pertains to your purpose or your business or just in general?
I think I did when I was kind of talking about like where I meant to go, where I went to go to my coach for help with that network marketing business. And I think that just was like the game changer. I can't even begin to tell you how frustrated I was at that point in my business, and not really like the goal was to help people through this business, but I was missing the mark because I was just seeing too much of the business part of it. And so I was missing completely that part of like actually helping people and getting pressure and doing things in that business that I didn't want to do. Ironically, though, like through this, I've met a lot of spiritual people and everything else, and people start to come into your life. Some people will start to leave. And this was slowly, people would start to leave. But then I was getting a lot of spiritual people out there. And so what's funny is then, yeah, like when that all of a sudden she's like, I'm doing this coach school, and being able to jump on that, and then learning about like I can't even tell you the angel numbers. Whether people believe it or not, I don't even care. It's just freaky at this point for me. So I'm going with it that I'm on the right track. It's 555 all the time, 444, 111 a lot. And they come up at different times. Like I could literally, I'm not looking for it. I'm glancing, but every time I pull into my car, like my parking spot, like outside of my house, and I just like, I'm like, oh, okay, let me see what time it is so I can whatever. Always like it's insane. Things start to align. So now it's just what I'm noticing is when I am in this alignment and everything else, people come in, and then others that really were not serving me, and you know, or whatever, they kind of take themselves out, like, and that's what's starting to happen. And where I used to kind of be afraid or try to logically, you know, from the mind, and I'm learning that I need to let that go too, like logically doing things, or like just with my thinking mind too much. Like it's really from here, like it's in my gene keys and it's in my human design. Like I need to just kind of like stay away from my head. But that's what's starting to happen. So like now that the gene keys and, you know, the human design kind of thing is happening, there's a lot of different things that are and people that are coming in. So that's what I'm really finding, that if I'm looking back like 3 or 4 years now, like that was not my space. There was a lot of different people with a lot of like, woe is me, a lot of really no purpose. Like it was an existence. And now I don't have that. Like I have a real fire in my belly. And I know when I get tired, like I actually have something to kind of use to kind of help me cope with that. I know I'm listening to my body. Like I've even told my kids, I'm like, I could feel it. Like, so for me, April and May is going to kind of slow down a bit because I don't have, I'm listening to my human design. I'm undefined at my root. So the only thing that keeps me kind of like that energy, physical energy going, my coach actually is defined and has the 52. I have the 9 above that. And so see, again, like I can make that connection with people, but I also know that ultimately it's me. I need to slow down because that's how I burn out. Therefore, going back to inertia, right? Inertia and indifference. And then I fall into that. And then that's for me, it's a very hard space and shadow to get up from. I already see how my thing goes. Whereas before I would stay in inertia for months. It was bad. Now, if I stay, I'm aware of it. If I stay in it, I'm like, if something upsets me or whatever, in any of those, I have a good cry. I allow myself a tantrum, a cry or whatever, and then I got it out. We got to get out of that. Because for me, it's months. You know, I'm sure a lot of spiritual people say that I'm very open, very whatever. Like, so I try and get out of that very quickly because then I can stay in those shadows a long time. But this is something I know about me, and notice not once did I really talk about anybody else. This before it would be like, this person did this to me, and oh my God, I got this to do and this responsibility. Like, no, this is all me. This is my responsibility, my shadows, my, you know, thing. So it's really listening to that and that's, and, you know, calming down and, you know, listening to myself over everybody else's expectations.
So it sounds like for you, a lot of synchronicities are more like the breadcrumbs and how you got here. Yep. And which is also its own synchronicity, because there's a reason why you are where you are and why you were drawn and certain things were put in your path. So there's synchronicities can 100% show up in different ways. I know what you're talking about with the angel numbers. Right now, my thing is 222 everywhere. 222. I mean, I kind of get it. I'm starting to kind of figure out I have a lot of big new things coming up with not just my business, but with what I'm offering and whatever. So there's a lot of big shifts happening. I'm assuming that has to do with the 222, but yeah. I'm telling you, in the weirdest of places, 222, 222, 222. And I'm like, I get it. 222. What does it mean? Okay. But yeah, it's so funny when you start to become aware that there are signs. That's when things just pop up. Like you said, you're not looking for it. The other day I was waiting for a train, right? And I just like glanced at my phone. It was 222. And I was like, of course it's 22. Like, I don't even question it anymore. I'm like, yep.
Okay. Just that confirmation, like, yeah. And that's it. It's just, I'm rolling with it. I feel like just that kid in me is like happy that it's like we're not so serious and we're not just so like I just you get to the point you just want to like live your life and have fun, and it took so much pressure off. I feel relaxed, and it's just so simple to kind of be like, this is what I'm doing. I don't overthink it too much. There are a lot of people that have been in my life for a while, and I do talk through and communicate things with them. I don't just drop people. But I'm no longer putting anybody else's happiness above my own. And then people will say with kids, that's, this is an unpopular opinion, but you do have to take care of yourself first. Because from the place that I was at, and I just kind of looked at a presentation from when I was like really low. I can't imagine how the heck I was a parent from that point. And so call it selfish, call it whatever, but I have to be this person that I have to study and take this time to contemplate and do all of these things for myself. So that way I'm able to help myself and then guide them to kind of helping themselves. And, I really implore everybody to do that. I know there's so many people that, need this help, a lot of like Buddhists and I'm sure like other, modalities and everything else will tell you you have to help yourself first. But especially there was a Buddhist story that kind of said that like somebody wanted to help the world or whatever. He was like in school for like not being a monk, but like studying, like, and the master was like, what are you going to do? You have learned nothing yourself, So you really have to like do that. Yes, there's horrible things or things in your life, but you got to work on you first. And that's that whole reconnecting back to you piece that I really tell people. It's a game changer because then everything, like you're saying, all of a sudden things start to sync up the way they should. And that because the universe is waiting to give you all of this stuff. God, whoever you believe, they're just willing to give you this stuff. But you're not putting yourself in line with that stuff. And I couldn't understand that for the longest time, obviously being in the shadow frequency, until I actually started tapping the gift more and more and more. And then now it's just like, I'm being put in front of you. I'm being put in front of like other people. Like I'm able to now radiate out in a more positive light than just like, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know who cares to listen to this. There's a different frequency to things. And looking back, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on that you said that I just love. First of all, the fact that you were talking about how in the past you didn't ever slow down and listen to like what you needed. And the thing is, when you're actually able to slow down, you're making space for spirit to connect with you, for your intuition to connect with you, for you finding yourself. You're making the space, because I think what happens in the world today is a lot of people get overwhelmed with what they're supposed to be doing. And that overwhelm literally gives them no space to connect with themselves. And then there's no opening for that. So I love how you did mention how that was a big part of like helping you find your path is realizing like, oh, I need to slow down, and then listening. But then also you have a great point of, even as a parent, we have to put ourselves first. And again, it sounds bad when you look at it from like the lens of, oh, you need to take care of your kids. We're not saying we're not taking care of our kids. Like the bare minimum there, feeding them, we're clothing them, we're there for them. But you can't. So the way that I would use this or phrase this with my readings, there's certain cards that share this aspect. You can't give from an empty cup. So if your emotional or nurturing or needed capacity is a cup full of water, if you're trying to give from a cup that's literally dry and barren, what are you giving? You have nothing to give, and you're obviously not doing okay either. So the idea is, how can you fill your cup to the point where it's overflowing? And then your overflow is everything that you're able to give and more, and it's actually going to be beneficial to you and them. Another really great analogy to this, which I think for logical minds or left brain thinkers, this will land more with them, is when we go on an airplane and they tell you that if you have a dependent with you and the oxygen mask drops down, they tell you put the mask on yourself first, then your dependents. And, initially you might be like, no, I have to put it on my dependent first because, they're important. But what if you pass out before you even get it on them? What if you get it on them and then you pass out? Well, then what good are for them? You're not able to do anything for them. Now they're really on their own. So it's super important to shift your perspective to take care of you. So that way now you can show up in your best capacity to take care of other people. So it has to start here. So from here, I would like to take us to my very last question that I ask everybody, which is, and I think I already know the answer to this, but I need to hear your perspective. Do you believe that everyone has a purpose?
Yes, I do. And I got it. All you have to do is find it in your gene key. That's it. It's just it's all in your gene key. And that's your purpose. And that's basically, it's your treasure map to your soul. That's screaming at you. If I could give anybody that gift, that is your purpose. And what you do after your contemplation, of what you take from that, because I still can't everything's there. I could study your gene keys, but essentially it's your life, your experiences, what you went through to kind of say, okay, this is what I need to take to go and do XYZ.
I love that. So with that in mind, if our listeners wanted to work with you directly, either as a mindset coach or to learn their gene keys, where can they find you?
So I'm on IG at Sasha Harris _Greenidge. I'm at Sasha Harris Greenidge on Facebook. I do have a private Facebook group called Safe Space for the Soul. It's just a way for women to learn more about different mindset tools, including the gene keys and how that works for them, without having Uncle Jim or Uncle Tom, commenting on your post, are you okay? Because I've had that. And I believe in the show notes, there's a Calendly link. If anybody would like to book a free clarity call, we go through the wheel of life. And I do take a look at your life's work gene key and kind of just give you a very broad interpretation of that you can kind of then take to contemplate, and we find out if we're a fit for one another.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to send me that link. So I'll put your Instagram and I'll put that link in the show notes of this podcast. So for anyone that wants to connect with you, they can do it easy and quickly. So I'll definitely get that from you. And yeah, this sounds so interesting and I'm so fascinated. I'm sure listeners are too. So if you're wanting to learn more, Sasha's your girl. Yeah. So this has been such a fun conversation, right up my alley of all the things I love to chat about. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so happy. I geek out on this. I enjoy it immensely.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.